Okay, yeah, we're good. I could just record it on my phone. Great. Okay. So give me a couple more seconds. Okay, perfect. So yeah. Okay, so in this session we are going to essentially close up our discussion upon the planets, and we are going to be talking about Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Okay. So whenever you're ready, I'll begin the reading.
Alrighty.
All right, perfect. So first and foremost, we are going to start talking about. We're going to start with your Saturn, which is in Libra within the 12th house. So when it comes to Saturn, Saturn is essentially the planet that helps us gain better understanding about like our restrictions and limitations in this life. And it also helps us gain understanding where our trials and tribulations are, but in so many ways where we need to learn in one way to push against, but then in another, like, well, to push against by creating systemization and discipline. Like, when you look at the symbol for the sun, which is like a circle and a dot, the sun, as we previously discussed, is like the planet in astrology that deals with one's sense of self, one sense of individuality, and one's willpower. And your sun really, really helps you gain awareness on how it is that you as an individual can push through life. You know, it's a very masculine force. And in so many ways, the dot in the middle of the sun signifies like the spirit and our individualistic ability to push against the experiences that life presents and brings to us. But then the circle that surrounds the sun, or the circle that surrounds the dot, is like the boundaries and limitations that are there. But like the whole symbol of the sun is all about learning to push against the restrictions of Saturn. And so when we look at your Saturn, it kind of helps you gain a better awareness of what you as an individual need to learn to push against, like what restrictions are there that you need to learn to break and like push against. And so first and foremost, your Saturn is in Libra, right? And Libra is the sign that deals with relationships. It's funny. It's funny to me because in the previous session we talked a little bit about this as well. So Saturn is in Libra, which is the sign of relationships, and it's in the 12th house as well. So what we talked about previously, about like you having like Mars and Leo and Libra, I mean, in the 12th house, and how that signifies a great struggle and a great struggle in relationships, but also like that being the place where you may be more inclined towards having a sense of motivation to want to like get things done in. If that makes sense. Does that
Hmm.
make sense, or should I like explain it in another way?
You can explain it another way.
Okay. So your Mars is like all about your ambition, and yeah, it's about ambition and the things that you are motivated and wanting to do. It's kind of like your fire. And so with your Mars being in Libra, it indicates that there is a
The
sense of
Saturn or Mars?
huh?
Saturn or Mars?
Mars. But I'm
Eh,
speaking about Saturn. I mean, I'm speaking about Mars right now, even though we're talking on Saturn. because
Okay.
Saturn and Mars are in the same um placements, and they're also conjunct each other. So they're kind of feeding each other. But the interesting thing about Saturn and Mars is that they're both considered maleficent planets in astrology, in the sense that they both kind of bring hardship and trials and tribulation. But the thing with Mars is like those things that even though difficult, you kind of have this instilled will to overcome and push forward, regardless of the fact that it's hard. Whereas Saturn is more like those experiences that are more like that may seem somewhat out of your control. They may seem like this is just a result of life happening to you. But then Mars is more like hardships that even though they may seem like they're happening to you, you have this ability to overcome it through like using aggressive energy or using passion or however it may be. Like, does that make sense or no?
Kind of.
Like, Saturn is more like restrictions, but Mars is more like one's ability to break through those restrictions through aggression. Not Saturn, but Mars is like the warrior within us that has the ability to fight, but then Saturn is more like those aspects that we experience in life that make us feel like we may be in bondage or maybe imprisoned and like we kind of don't have control. And it's kind of like forces outside of us making things hard for us. And another example would be like, Saturn deals with things like poverty, Saturn deals with things like illness and all that good stuff. So poverty and illness can be like in circumstances and situations that are just imposed upon us that we really don't have control upon. Like, an ill person kind of just wakes up and they're ill, and like they may feel like this is just their burden to carry. But Mars is more like things, and it can be like poverty and illness too, but it's more like not deciding to settle for that, but feeling like wanting to go within and conjure up that fire to overcome it, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's like the difference between Mars and Saturn, but they're both maleficent though. One is just masculine, the other is feminine. And now with you having Saturn in Libra in the 12th house, it is another indication that helps us gain an awareness that the area where you go may or going through a lot of trials and tribulations and may find yourself um in bad luck with. I guess I can say that another way, like unfortunate in is like where relationships and partnerships are concerned. But like Saturn being in Libra, also being, the planet that deals with time, it helps us understand that through your ability to go through, the different relationships that may be attracted to you, but also your ability to systemize those experiences in the sense that, there's a saying that goes, practice makes perfect. And Saturn is all about trial and tribulations, like continuously going through something over and over, like going through a lesson over and over until you finally learn it. But the thing is, practice doesn't per se make perfect unless you are continuously self-assessing and giving yourself feedback. Because some people, due to not being introspective, they may do the same thing over and over and over, but rather than self-correcting, they're continuously practicing how to be, um, how to do things wrong, if that makes sense. So, like, that energy of wrong is being continuously reinstilled within their subconscious mind. So it's like the more they do it, the more they're practicing wrong qualities about that thing. But where Saturn comes into play is like it helps us gain an awareness of the importance of like learning to systemize, learning to like, let's say, sit down and introspect and sit down and like be aware of like the experiences you have in relationships, and also having an ability to perceive your past and how those experiences happened, but then having an ability to introduce new things into that experience where relationships are concerned that can help improve and enrich it, meaning not doing the same things in relationships over and over and over, but continuously adjusting and changing the way that you do things in your experiences with relationships, to a point where through the continual practice, you find yourself acting differently and thus almost even becoming a different person where relationships are concerned and how you interact with relationships. Does that is that making sense or
Hmm.
okay for sure? But yeah, no, for the most part, I'll also say that Saturn, like a couple of clients of mine in the past who have had Saturn in Libra, one thing a continuous pattern I've noticed is, let's say they've been married in the past before, but they've had many divorces and they've had to get married many different times again. And it's like just kind of almost this in a bit like um need, rather I should say, to learn lessons in life, but through experiences in relationships. And it's like until they learned how to, like, technically value themselves a little bit more and gain better awareness of what they need and what they want in a relationship, they were going through the same marriages, but with different people, but it was like the same scenario and the same energy. So Saturn and Libra just indicates that a place where you have learning to do is definitely partnerships and relationships. And it's important that you don't allow things to repeat in loops, but you gain that mercurial energy of being in like because within all things in astrology, like I mean within all of the planetary spheres, you need the planet Mercury because the planet Mercury is the planet of logic, rationalization, and intellect. And when we have logic, rationalization, and intellect, whether it be like with in conjunction within any planet, this specifically right now we're talking about Saturn. We intellectual through using our intelligence, we find better ways of conducting relationships. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. Better ways of building and conducting relationships. Another thing I can also say about Saturn being in Libra is you're definitely meant to eventually find a partner, who you can stay with for the long term. Like this isn't per se a planetary alignment that creates energies where it's like, let's say a one night stand or this or the third or the fourth, but it's more like finding someone who you can stick with and stay with for the long term. So yeah, these are a couple things that Saturn in Libra in the 12th house is revealing to you. But simultaneously, I also say this, because it's in the 12th house, it's important that you understand that a lot of the experiences you have in relationships, where, okay, Saturn is opposed to the moon's energy, and it also opposes Venus's energy to an extent. So Saturn being opposed to the moon is all about closeness. It's all about caring, and warmth, and having someone that can take you into consideration and can care about you. But Saturn is completely opposite to that. Saturn is more like strictly business. Saturn can be like the planet of selfishness, and it can just be cold and dry. So this is like because I know that previously you were also telling me how you've had these certain experiences in relationships where it was like you were with a partner who was kind of maybe more selfishly focused and selfishly orientated rather than anything else. But so, like, you also have to understand, like, with you having Saturn in the 12th house specifically, it's important that you do deep, like, shadow and subconscious work because a lot of the experiences you have in relationships are just projections of certain energies that you are carrying with you from the past. And you also brought a past life. So yeah, it can even go as far as past life experiences. But pretty much it's important that you do that in self introspection and review like your beliefs surrounding around relationships and because even in psychology it's revealed that our experiences in life are highly dictated by our beliefs. So like your experiences in relationships or reflective to your beliefs. And I also like to say that um, the things you go through somewhat reflect the things you're willing to tolerate. So I feel like it's kind of important to dive into the subconscious and gain that deeper awareness of just the ideas and thoughts revolving around your relationships and like what you're willing to interact with when it comes to other people. But yeah, I don't know, like, if does that make sense to you, or like, would you like me to? Okay, for sure.
No, because I'm doing a lot of shadow work right now.
Okay,
Um, and just currently in a, I don't know if you've heard of Sankofa rites of passage.
it sounds familiar, but I'm not too sure if I have.
But it's causing me to go back into family trees and family history,
Mhm,
learning about I'm finding out about generational baggage that I'm carrying.
mhm,
Um, this past year, I've learned about um, lifetime baggages that I'm carrying, past life baggage that I'm carrying.
mhm.
So yeah, and it's all relationship and
Related.
yeah, love related, sex related. It's all within that realm of um,
Yeah, for sure.
and also learning that the lifetimes that I've had are not um, are not the only lifetimes that I've had, but the lifetimes that um, I need to heal um, are the ones that I'm dealing with now. Those were the lifetimes that my life was cut short, or I had really traumatic things that happened to me.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely makes sense. Looking at your chart, and it's interesting the presence of Jupiter, like specifically through the houses. Like you have a couple of major 12th house and ninth house placements, and so
Quite a
the
few,
ninth, huh?
quite a few.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And so both the ninth house and the 12th house traditionally are associated with Jupiter, and Jupiter, because Jupiter rules Sagittarius, the ninth house sign, and Jupiter also rules Pisces, the 12th house sign. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because in our previous sessions, I was talking about how important it is for you to learn to tap into like, some form of like spiritual practice that can even mirror like religion, because I'm not really a spiritualist who says throw away all religions, because I believe that within all religions there are truth. The only problem is the dogma that man instills within religion. um
Hmm.
but yeah, so the ninth house is very much a house that deal in astrology, right, that deals with like the accumulation of knowledge and wisdom, and one's ability, because the ninth house deals with long distance travels, it deals with other countries as well. And so it helps us understand the significance and importance of expanding our minds through having a capacity to expose ourselves to different forms of cultures and different forms of religions, or however it may be. But simultaneously
Which
at
is
the house, go ahead, what were you gonna say?
which is why when I was younger, I was interested in other religions and other um, forms. When I was coming out of high school,
Hmm.
I have been Catholic my entire life.
Right.
That's all I knew. But Catholicism was so restricting, and it was in a box, and I
Mhm.
was not a box.
Right.
Um, I had a religion teacher, my eighth grade religion teacher, my high school religion teacher,
Mhm.
who I still believe was a gay woman, but that's neither here nor there. Um, she was like, there are so many other things, and there are so many other religions um, and so many form of spirituality expressions that you can be in and practice. Um, and that definitely did open my eyes. Or my understanding, because again, when you're fed that doctrine and you don't know anything else, I don't know to go to look for something else. I didn't know to go somewhere else. At that point, I absolutely didn't know or understand my purpose. Um, so it was, but when I got into college, I did decide to explore other religions, even within um, the Christianity. Um, So I was Christian and I was non-denominational and I was apostolic, and
Hmm.
the list kind of just went on.
For sure.
Um,
For sure.
so yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely that makes sense for sure. And yeah, that makes sense. And also, I guess one thing I'll say is as because being a house of travel, right? Long distance travel, because the third house is like the house of short distance travel. The ninth house, it not only reflects in traveling the physical world and going to different countries, but it also reflects in internal spiritual travels, where you, like, let's say through a religion or through spiritual books, you read it and then you go places of the mind, you know what I'm saying? Due to what you're learning and educating yourself and being also a mutable sign, because being a house connected to a mutable sign, rather, I should say, Sagittarius, the mutable signs are like liquid and they're kind of all about having the ability to be flexible and adaptable and connect with all like many different things, right? That's just mutable energy in general. But then fire is like the song, the element of perception, of viewpoints, of seeing. You know what I'm saying? So it's all about learning how you can, in your life, use these many different viewpoints that you gain from these different religions, but kind of unify them all into one. If that makes sense,
Absolutely.
for sure. I'm not sure also if I talked about this, but with you having your son in the ninth house, it's not enough for you to just study and learn about different religions, but it's like you have to be in it. You can't come in the image of it. You have to be the image. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to learn how to embody those energies. And because the sun is the identity, the ego, the self-expression. You have to find ways on how you can not just talk about it, but live about it, be about it, and literally be the manifestation of those things. But yeah, for sure. And yeah, that's not to say that eventually on your journey you won't come to a religion or spiritual practice that suits you the most. And when you do find that, definitely stick with it, but still always keep an open mind. But always know that like this is the one that resonates the most with me. And I think you found that one because previously you were talking to me about an African religion in the previously.
Ifa.
Ifa, right, right, exactly. So that may be the one for you. But yeah. So I bring up the influence of Jupiter, like through the ninth house and the 12th house, because yeah, the ninth house is like the house that deals with books and knowledge and studying and gaining spiritual illumination through that way, through in a sense amassing knowledge from the books and like teach learning from the teachers, like the philosophical ones, the religious ones, and all, so on and so forth. But then like the 12th house is more like tapping in beyond the physical world and learning, let's say through things like meditation, to tap into your inner world and gain guidance and instruction from like the other plane or the inner plane. And so yeah, this can play out through, like, let's say you learning to tune in inwardly and then having all of these spiritual teachers that you attract to yourself. Or it can even be like you and your higher self, you being guided by your higher self, rather, I should say. And things like tuning into your past life experiences and kind of, yeah, kind of seeing the things you've gone through in your past, these are all 12th house things. But there's definitely a balance between tapping into the external world to amass knowledge and wisdom, but also learning how to tap into your inner world, your unconscious mind, and working with that internal platform. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And this is like where you have Mars and Saturn, and also Pluto. You know, Pluto is also considered a maleficent planet. So you have
Mhm.
Mars, the minor maleficent, and then Saturn, the major maleficent. You know, and then Pluto, which can play out either way. It can be positive or negative, but it's typically negative. Um, So they're all in the 12th house, which is the house of your unconscious mind. So it's like one of the best things you can do for yourself is literally learning how to reprogram your unconscious mind and tapping into that platform, you know. And so one thing I also offer beyond like astrology is like I think we talked about this previously is like teachings on esoteric psychology and mental alchemy, you know, which I feel like can be something that you could definitely benefit from as it'll help you gain better awareness of like the subconscious and unconscious mind and how that works, and it'll also employ you with tools that you can use, you know, to alter and change the way that things within your unconscious mind flow. Um, yeah. But it's important that you do that because a lot of the experiences that we go through in our physical life, especially when you have 12th house influences, are a result of things from the um behind the scenes influencing you. Like when you have powerful 12th house influences, like your unconscious mind has a greater ability to influence your reality, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Um. Mhm.
what did you say?
No, go ahead.
Oh, for sure. And it's like as long as you're kind of unaware of it and you're letting it persist and happen, typically the influences are negative because unfortunately the 12th house is even though having a capacity to be positive, it plays out more so negative because it's also, you know, just passive. It's a passive house. But once
Mhm.
you learn to actively, because with passive and like negative houses, you have to instill like, you know, the masculine energies like the sun and like even Mars and Mercury, you know, that positiveness through continuously applying thinking, continuously directing your willpower, and continuously directing like your aggressive energies. You know, aggression is like can be very powerful in the sense that like through Scorpio, which is Mars's feminine side, Scorpio is like fixed emotions, you know. And when you learn how to use your aggressive energies, you can direct it like a laser or something, if that makes sense. But yeah, so it's important that you learn how to apply active energies to your 12th house, which is typically one that likes to play out more so negative than positive. But okay,
You said learn how to do what?
learn how to into your 12th house, um, which is precisely particularly a feminine passive negative house,
Mhm.
and still like the energies of the more positive masculine planets like the sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Mercury, specifically the sun, Mars, and Jupiter. Meaning like the sun would be like learning how to more consciously direct your willpower in correlation to your 12th house, which is the house of like the unconscious mind. And Mercury
Mhm.
would be like learning how to think constructively rather than um entertain spontaneous thinking, which is like random thought that kind of has no direction, but it's continuously just all over the place. But learning
Thanks
to
to
off
my Gemini.
right, yeah, pretty much. No, for sure, seriously. But yeah, so
Yeah,
pretty much
seriously.
you already know I'm like multi Gemini, so I get that. But yeah, so and that's like learning to apply the Mercury, but as you're doing this, it always has okay. So I'm not sure if we discussed this yet, and I think I have in the beginning of our work together. But when it comes to the birth chart, it's important to understand it as like a two-dimensional mapping of the fourth dimension, which is like the realm where like your subconscious mind resides, and like the different thought structures within your subconscious mind reside, rather, I should say. And so your birth chart is just revealing and helping you understand the different energies that are happening within your subconscious mind. Like that's literally why you can even resonate with it. And that's why I can explain to you your life, because it's just a reflection of your mind. And the first hermetic principle is the law that everything is mental. But
Mm-hmm.
from understanding it from that perspective, it's important to know that you can tap into your mind and like rearrange certain things. Like for instance, like you don't have Mercury in your 12th house, but through you like using the mercurial energy in the 12th house setting, you can start to instill 12th house things into you can start to instill Mercury things into your 12th house. And so, like as we previously stated, right, the 12th house is all about the unconscious mind. It deals with beliefs from the past, experiences that happened in the past that you still carry with you. And so this can be like using intelligence in correlation with your 12th house. And yeah, and that'll really, really start to help reorganize the way that your energies are currently mentally, which is a result of the way that your life is currently. Because as within, so without. But you can do that for also your sun. You can take your sun, which is like your willpower, your identity, and just your ego, and direct it into your 12th house by thinking about 12th house things through the sun's energy. But like we'll get deeper into this later, because this is like when we're talking about mental alchemy, and I'm kind of just diving into like the fifth lesson of mental alchemy. So there's many, many things I feel you need to understand first before truly applying this, if that makes sense. But I kind of just wanted to share that with you real quick. Um, but like, did that make sense to you? Like, can you see yourself applying that, or
Um, I would have to um talk about it more. Did you hear me?
no? All I heard was you would have to.
Oh, I said I would have to talk about it more.
But yeah, for sure, I agree with you. But that's definitely one thing. I don't even know why I wanted to touch on it, but because it's so deep. But yeah, like it's important that we
No, it's it's understood. Uh,
that
yeah,
that
it's understood. There's not a yeah, it's not a confusion as to what
wonderful,
what what you just said.
wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. But yes, definitely it's important that we understand, even in operating in astrology, that because astrology, like Hermeticism, do you know much about Hermeticism by chance?
Mm, little.
Okay. So like for me, I had a friend recently ask me like what my religious viewpoints were, because I was teaching her so much about religion and all that good stuff. And I had to sit down and think about it, and I realized that for me, I would have to say I'm a hermetic. Like I practice hermeticism, and because a lot of my beliefs align with it. But then, as I was sitting and I was thinking about it, I realized that hermeticism comes from Hermes, and Hermes is Mercury. And so it's so funny because it's so Geminian of me to just synchronize with Hermeticism, and I bring that up because you have some Gemini placements yourself. So I feel like you can definitely benefit from tapping into Hermeticism. But in Hermeticism, their core understanding and belief is astrology. Like astrology is so significant to them. And but they also have the seven Hermetic principles, which one of is the law of mentalism. And then the second is law of correspondence. But pretty much, I say all that to say that your birth chart isn't fixed in stone, but it's just a map of your mental conditions at the time of your birth. And it's like a lot of these placements that manifest within your birth chart, they're here because they're fixed, like they're very solidified. There are things in your mind that are solidified, but just because they're solidified doesn't mean that as you've gone through many, many different experiences in your life today, and if you start, let's say, to intentionally apply energies into your life to alter these energies in your birth chart that you can, in the sense that this is just the mapping of where your mind was when you were born, and from this energies you've manifested a plethora of things into your life. But it's like through intentional directing, you can actually learn to override these planetary alignments. And it's not going to be easy work, not at all. Like you're literally going to try to reconstruct things that have taken you probably centuries to create and develop, but it's like it's definitely possible. And like we have as human beings, we have this capacity, this divine godlike ability to um override the stars, you know what I'm saying? But it's like that's a whole nother level of consciousness we need to get to. But like even me, I'm not completely there yet. Like I feel like I'm just scratching the surface of that. But yeah, I'm not completely there yet. But I just wanted to pass to you and let you know that there's definitely a possibility. But yeah, so general things with Saturn and Libra, right, are like people talk about these people being the people that favor fairness, and equality and justice, and these can be humanitarians as well. And I feel like a lot of this expressed for you in your experience in life where you were like when you were in school, I think in university or whatever it was, and how you were like standing up for people and you were kind of like that ambassador, for others and all that good stuff. How
Hmm.
about you the word ambassador, right, as well? But okay, yes, that's pretty much like your Saturn in the 12th house in Libra. And like with astrology, it can always get deeper. Like we've literally spent like, I would say like 20 minutes talking about Saturn. But yeah, so now we'll look into your Uranus. So Uranus, when you look at the image of the symbol for Uranus, it's like a circle. It's like the symbol of the sun. The only difference is there is a arrow. There are two different glyphs used to symbolize Uranus, but the one in front of me is like the symbol of the sun with the arrow pointing upward. Now, both Uranus and the sun have somewhat similar energies in the sense that the sun deals with the individual, but Uranus also deals with the individual. But Uranus deals with the individual from the perspective of uniqueness and originality. Like Uranus helps us gain a better awareness of how it is that we, as we move through life, express our unique and original energies. You know what I'm saying? It kind of helps us understand how we can differentiate ourselves from the crowd and just all that good stuff. So first and foremost, you have Uranus and Sagittarius within the second house. So Sagittarius is a sign that deals with religion and philosophy. It deals with religion and it deals with philosophy. And it deals with higher thinking and higher knowledge. So what this reveals to us is that for you, the way that you stand out of the crowd is in correspondence to your religious and like your spiritual beliefs and your spiritual perspective. So it's like no matter what, you probably will always have very unique and original viewpoints on like philosophy and how to see the world. And on top of that, like we have Uranus in the second house. So Uranus being in the second house also shows and reveals to us that Another thing about you that reveals a lot of uniqueness and originality is like your values in this life. Like your values may be very alien to certain people, possibly. But I think one thing before I go into talking about Uranus that I want to share is the fact that Uranus is considered like a satellite, you know, and Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. These are planets that are said to be added onto our solar system. Like they weren't always here. They're recent. They're not per se, yeah, not per se recent developments, but more so they were ushered in from a different solar system. However you may want to put it. And this is reflective to the fact that like Uranus and Neptune and even Pluto, their moons spin opposite to how our moons, like let's say like the moons like of the planets from Saturn to like this to like the to like Earth, they spin clockwise. Uranus and Neptune's moons spin counterclockwise. But yeah, so these are just energies that are very alien and like different and weird. And like it also helps us understand what new energies we're here to bring into this world. Like Uranus is this the planet that deals with inventiveness and in a sense thinking outside of the box. And so with you having Uranus and Sagittarius, I feel like this is an energy where like forget like even looking for like your religion right outside of yourself, but it may even be an indication that you're here to bring a whole new like religion or way of thinking. But I
You
feel
know
like
what's so crazy?
tell me.
I literally was writing that when you were saying it.
What? That's hilarious. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like it's fun. It kind of synchronizes with your sun in the ninth house as well. Because the sun is like, yeah, as I said earlier, it's not just about thinking about it or sharing it, but literally becoming it. But on top of that, the sun is like one's willpower. And the ninth house is the house that deals with like heavenly things and so on and so forth. So if you're having your sun in the ninth house, it's like the greater you have the ability to unify your willpower, your human will, into the will of the divine, the greater like your life will improve and the more in alignment with fulfilling your purpose you will be. But it's like it's important for us to understand that like I feel like for every human being, like that should be the objective and goal to transform their selfish will into harmony with like the will of like the divine or a higher will. You know what I'm saying? To come down here in a sense, do God's work and all of that good stuff. But yeah, like with you also having Uranus in Sagittarius, this is like um I feel like one of the ways that you can gain a lot of transformation and change into your life is definitely through that Sagittarius energy. Because Uranus does also deal with change and also specifically sudden changes. So it's like the more, and also we have to understand that when it comes to Sagittarius, it's a fire sign. So the opposite sign to Sagittarius is Gemini. Gemini is more inclined towards the mind and it's inclined towards thinking, and so like with us Geminis, we can have this tendency of um, um, like paralyzation through like I was gonna say opportunity paralysis where like there's some and yeah I guess it's the right way to put it where it's like we may find ourselves sitting and thinking so much about things that we may not just do anything, and sometimes Geminis we may confuse thinking with action when in reality thinking and action are completely two different things. But it's like yeah, so that's
Most
Gemini.
of my problem, most of my life.
Yeah, yeah. So and like that's like something that you can learn to balance out by studying like Gemini's quote unquote sister sign Virgo, because Mercury rules both Gemini and Virgo. So by studying Virgo and understanding Virgo and learning yourself to be a little bit more Virgo, you can balance that Geminian energy. But for you as a Gemini, I feel it's very important. you learn mental alchemy and esoteric psychology because Gemini deals with thinking and thought. And as a result of that, and you also have like your sun in Cancer, right, which is also a mental sign connected to the moon, one of the spheres that deals with the mind. Um,
Mm-hmm.
with you having like Gemini here, it's like important to understand that all activity is followed em- um by the thought, by way of thinking. And so it's like if there's something that you want to do, but you find yourself not doing because there may be doubt or fear or just certain energies that are coming from within you holding you back, it's important to understand that these experiences you're going through with not going after your desires are a result of certain thought structures or thought beliefs within your mind acting to override your desire. Like you may have a desire to want to do something, but then there is a something within your mind that's more powerful that's overriding that desire, and that's where that doubt and that fear comes from. And so it's like important to learn how to deal with that and resolve it first so then there is no source for doubt or fear to get in your
Where
way.
does this where does that come from again?
Where does what come from?
The source.
So
The
so it's like we are walking or we are walking organizations of thought, but we manifest physically. Like everything, even our skin is like a manifestation of some sort of thought. And so the source of it is like my thought structure within my mind is different from yours. And so within your thought structure, there are certain thoughts that correspond with certain activities and certain energies. And these thoughts can either harmoniously support your desires or go against your desires. And it's kind of like every life, like technically every life form is composed of like these seven energies, right? Which can be reflective to the planet, like the sun's energy, which is like a desire for power. But it's like these desires for power, which is like or significance, which is reflected by the sun, according to our experience, could be conditioned harmoniously or it could have been conditioned painfully, meaning that some people feel more powerful and more significant when they are like acting from a place of like fear, if that makes sense. Like fear may make them feel safer and it may make them feel like more protected and so feel more good about themselves. But then other people, they may be more, as a result of their experiences, conditioned to go towards pleasure. So their actions towards self significance may incline more towards wanting to do things outside of their comfort zone and to expand themselves. And it's like in accordance to like the experiences you've had in the span of like your soul's journey, you can either be someone who has these thought structures within your mind that respond more to pain or respond more to act more to pleasure. Um, did that make sense, or like, would you like me to kind of explain it a little bit more?
No, it kind of made sense.
Right, for sure, for sure. But yeah, it's kind of like hold on, I'm trying to think. I probably don't even think about it like to explain it more, but yeah, for sure. So it's really all about understanding your way of thinking and seeing like how it is that your thoughts connect with each other to truly understand like why you can't do certain things and why you can do certain things. But yeah, it's not that you can or can't do certain things. Why you have certain self-imposed limitations, and then once you start working those thought streams out, then you can start to direct them towards more so harmoniously expressing themselves. Okay, like I still want to explain it a little bit more though.
Mhm.
I'll kind of give another example. It's kind of like when we incarnate into the world, as children, typically all of our desire, because it's like the root of all action is desire. We get up and we do something or things because there's this instilled desire within us to do it.
Mhm.
Now, it's like as a child, or the baby specifically, all of our desires seem to be fulfilled and they seem to be met. So it's like every single desire is just flowing harmoniously and naturally. And because a child's need for like food or attention or whatever can be easily attained. So there isn't much resistance and blockage towards those energies. But then as we grow up and we start to experience limitations, then our desires start to like be blocked, and we start to realize that we can't really fulfill certain things without having to struggle and go through it. Yeah, without having to struggle. And so then what happens is our energies or desires no longer find expression through pleasure, but they find expression through pain. And so, like, this can kind of be like us fulfilling, like, our desire for wealth rather than, because desire wants to fulfill itself, meaning it just wants to release and, like, have this sense of good feeling, if that makes sense. And so, like, rather than fulfilling that desire through pleasure, well, it's always going to end up in pleasure, but it's like rather than, because we don't have channels to fulfill those desires, what
Mhm.
happens is we find ways to demonize those desires or whatever to fulfill those desires and feel good about them. So this can kind of be like, like a lot of poor people, due to not having ability to find wealth, they demonize rich people and they're like, yo, this person is wealthy and rich. So like they talk crap about the wealthy person and that's how they feel good about themselves. Like that's just kind of how desire is expressing itself or finding ways to fulfill itself. Like did that make sense or no? Because I feel like I
Mhm.
did I did do a lot of talking, but I feel like my thoughts were kind of sporadic. But okay, if I'm glad it made sense. But that's the foundation of like all of our actions. Every single action is put there to help us release desire. But like desire can either be released constructively or negatively. But the point is desire always has to be released. And yeah, so yeah, I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. But yeah, so it's pretty much like your Uranus, and Sagittarius in the second house. The next thing that we'll kind of get into talking about is like your Neptune. And so your Neptune is also in Sagittarius within the second house. And so with you having Neptune in Sagittarius within your second house, this is kind of an indication that like, well, before I even talk about what this sign symbolizes, Neptune is the planet in astrology that deals with idealism. It deals with like also yeah, idealism, so things like our dreams and our aspirations and kind of like the concept of world peace, for example, and the desire. Because okay, Neptune is the planet that deals with universal unconditional love. So Neptune's energies are more like loving and caring. Like it rules Pisces, right? It co-rules Pisces, right? I should say. And Pisces is exalted in Venus, and Venus is the planet of love. And so Neptune's energy is very much all about love and, caring and all that good stuff for sure. But it primarily deals with our dreams and our visions and our aspirations. And so with you having Neptune and Sagittarius within the second house, it's an indication that a lot of what you aspire and like your concept of idealism has to deal a lot with like fulfillments of we can say philosophical principles, or like the greater you can align with your ideas around what it means to exalt yourself spiritually or religiously, the more like the more you can fulfill your ideals, you know what I'm saying? So it's like the more knowledge and wisdom you can gain in regards to understanding the bigger picture and understanding God, spirit, source, and kind of just understanding why we're here and the purpose of it all, and learning how to align with your purpose as well. The more like fulfillment you can gain where your ideals and your dreams are concerned. And like with Neptune being in Sagittarius, this definitely does indicate that your ideal dream state does have to do with some sort of fulfillment of some sort of spiritual principle or some sort of like religious principle, or just being religiously exalted or spiritually exalted. Like is that making sense so far? Or
Mm-hmm.
okay, for sure, for sure. Simultaneously, Sagittarius is also the sign beyond just dealing with wisdom. It also deals with freedom. And it deals with like freedom of expression. Um, yeah, it deals with freedom of expression, specifically the freedom to have the ability to think as you want and believe what you want to believe. So I feel like one of your ideals is also to be in a space where you're free to think what you want to think, and maybe that may have been a dream you had as a little girl in church. Who knows? But yeah, for sure.
Um,
So
Usually I scream about freedom, ironically,
mhm,
more so when I'm in relationships.
mhm.
When I'm in relationships, I'm usually at some point feel stifled and act out and create all types of drama, sometimes more harmful than others. But usually when I scream about freedom, it is typically in the sense of a relationship.
Yeah. So it's
Freedom to
interesting.
express myself better
Exactly.
or to be exactly who it is I think I want to be in that moment.
Yeah, I completely hear what you're saying. And it's interesting you say that, because when you said that, I looked at Neptune and I wanted to see if you had any aspects to Venus, which you do. Neptune is opposing your Venus, right? And so,
Which is crazy because that's the planet of the sign it's attached to, or
no, so
no?
Neptune, Neptune is attached to Pisces,
Okay.
but yeah, the Sagittarius is like ruled by Jupiter as well. So, Neptune does have an affinity to Sagittarius as well, for sure. But
Okay.
yeah, so because you have Neptune in Sagittarius, but then you have your Venus in Gemini, right? And Gemini and
Mhm.
Sagittarius, these two signs are opposites to each other. So yeah, no, that definitely does make sense. And so Neptune is like the sign that deals with, I mean, the planet, right? that deals with one's ideals and just one's sense of desires when it comes to, yeah, what one wants, like what one truly, truly wants. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause, and then Neptune is in Sagittarius, which is the energy and sign of freedom. But then it's opposing Venus, which is in Gemini in the eighth house. But like in
Okay.
general, if you're having Venus in the eighth house, like it makes sense that you may have this energy and desire of feeling like stuck and trapped in relationships. And it's important that when it comes to the way you think of relating with others and being in relationships with others, it's important that you yourself do like the work to learn how to create more free flowing thoughts in that. Because when Venus goes into the eighth house, it can kind of play out through this energy where these individuals can kind of be in a space where they may feel like, oh, once I'm in a relationship with this person, it's just me and them. I'm the person and they're my person. And like it can kind of be like this energy of like being super loyal to the point where it's like it can be detrimental to the self and it can kind of be self-sacrificing. And so that's
Mhm.
not always that doesn't always have to be the case. And that can also be one of the reasons why you may find yourself going about experiencing those energies in relationships, where and it's kind of like a self-inflicted prison almost. Because you go into a
Mhm.
relationship and you're like, all right, so this is my person, like there's no one else for me now. I found this guy and like that's it, that's all. But then it's like, yeah, but then the complaints arise and all that good stuff.
And even in the quote unquote openness or freedom of the relationship,
Mhm.
it's still not it's still not what it is that I probably desire fully. I'm still sacrificing what it is that I desire. Uh,
Mhm. For sure, that makes sense. And it's crazy too because I was thinking earlier about how I just started talking about desire and I was trying to explain it to you and even now because like when I look at your ascendant, your ascendant is 29 degrees Libra, which means your
mhm,
rising sign is Libra, but it's on the cusp of Scorpio, So there is a lot of scorpionic experiences that you go through in your life as well.
mhm,
And then like the planet ruling your second house, I mean your first house by sign is in Scorpio, you know what I'm saying? So Scorpio is definitely a powerful great influence in your life for sure. But Scorpio, I bring it up because Scorpio is a sign that deals with desire and it deals with the learning of how to properly direct desires and all that good stuff.
mhm,
So yeah, but I'll definitely put some content together, so then my thoughts aren't so sporadic next time I go about explaining to you desire. Like this, it's definitely something I know and I know how to explain, but I think I haven't really explained it to many, many different people. So that was like my first time attempting it. I feel like I was kind of all over the place, but I feel like that's kind of definitely something important for you to understand what desire is, how it influences our action, and how it plays out in the unconscious mind, but also how you can direct it so then you can start to fulfill your desires more healthily rather than destructively. Because the thing about
mhm,
desires is there is a continuous flow of desire, and it's like there's no stopping it. And I kind of like the
mhm,
analogy and the idea of um, like there being like a source of some sort of power, and then you kind of putting a cap onto that source of power. But like that power is still building up and building up and building up, and it's like if you want it or not, like the power is going to continue to build up to the point where it's going to have no choice but to like break that mold that's trying to
mhm.
hold it back. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's why it's important that we learn how to control our desires because our desires are going to express no matter what. But when we
And if
try
you
to
don't know
restrict
how to
it,
control it,
yeah, when we don't know how to control it, then it's going to start to express in very hideous ways, insidious, rather, I should say, ways. It's kind of like, in the church, right? They try to repress certain biological desires that deal with sex, but then now there's all these scandals around the crazy things that happen in the church. And
mhm,
instead, they're trying to restrict. something that they can't. You know what I'm saying? Like
They can. It's natural. It's human.
exactly.
Um, I did, and me and my grandmother, my great grandmother, ironically, who's part of the generational um generational things that I need to break.
Right.
Um, but we used to talk about it a lot. Like,
Mhm.
it's unnatural for um to take humans and say, okay, you can never have a intimate physical relationship with another human, but innately we are designed to have partnerships and intimacy with
Yeah, for sure.
people on that level.
For sure. 100%. 100%.
So yeah. And then of course again, like you said, because it is pushed to the back and restricted, then it expresses itself in much more horrendous ways. Yes.
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
that is definitely what I'm dealing with right now, or working or coming out of.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. And so when it comes, all right, so yeah, that's pretty much like Neptune and Sagittarius in the second house. Like, I also say this, like, another thing with you having Neptune in the second house, it's an indication that one of the things you definitely value would be like your ability of like imagination, possibly. You know what I'm saying? Your ability to see things outside of the physical world, and to be a visionary and to dream big, and see things that aren't really here yet. You know what I'm saying? But this is definitely another thing that's of value to you, or a value that you have that you can take advantage of and utilize, and that's your
It's a
imagination.
gift.
Exactly.
I can see situations before they unfold.
That makes sense
Um,
as well.
I can read a situation as it's presented in front of me. I
Mhm.
can read it in a way that most people wouldn't see. Um, yeah, I definitely have that ability, but with being an empath, a lot of times with what goes on in society or the world, especially like the elections that just passed,
Mhm.
um, being able to see the future in that sense has been very weary, because it doesn't look very pretty. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah.
yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. Like, because the thing is, like, the world that we're living in is collapsing. You know what I'm saying? And the ways that, like, the systems and everything that have been running society for so long, those systems are now being denied and they're being rejected. And I feel like what we're really seeing when we look into a world and we see all that darkness and negativeness is it's our standard and our idea of what good is kind of in conjunction with what we are experiencing now, what we're seeing now to an extent. But it's like all of that is dying, and there's gonna be this transformation that before the transformation can take place, there's gonna be a death and an ending that needs to happen first.
Yeah.
So, but at the
And I
same time,
and I know that that's what I've been seeing, and it just doesn't, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
I feel you. And at the same time, I feel like there is also this like divide happening between people that are vibrating on higher vibrations and those vibrating on lower vibrations. In the sense
Mhm.
that, like, when you really, really, really think about it, if you do all the work you need to do in order for you to synchronize and connect with God or higher power and be a vessel and a conduit for that higher power, then it's like you don't have to worry, like no matter how bad things get, even in the eye of
Mhm.
the storm, you can be in the
Mhm.
midst of it and you'll still be okay. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
So don't like the worst thing you could do is
it's
worry and be
worry.
afraid because
Mhm.
like I previously said, everything is mental and
Mhm.
emotions and thoughts are the substances of the mind. And it's like if you're entertaining negative emotions, it doesn't matter. Like even if your intentions are good, you're still going to create destruction because those negative emotions don't know better. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So yeah, you always want to be in higher spirits and yeah, the more positive energy for sure. And it's like, yeah. And I was gonna say that definitely makes sense, your capacity and ability to see into like the future and like just the because Sagittarius is a seer, and it's considered an oracle as well. It does have the
Mhm.
capacity to see into like the future and all that good stuff for sure. And now, so I feel like considering that like we've come up to our hour, I feel like we should save Pluto for the next session where we'll talk about like your I'll talk about Pluto, um the North Node, Lilith, Chiron, Fortune, and your vortex in
Okay.
the next session, if that's cool.
Okay.
All right, for sure. But yeah, this has definitely been uh, a really interesting session. I feel like it's emotional. Probably. But yeah, no, it's definitely been very wonderful. Doing this session for you and all that good stuff. But yeah, what were your thoughts? On the session today?
Um, my thoughts on this session today are honestly, there are no mistakes in the universe.
Okay.
And the fact that we are sitting and talking now as opposed to last year when we started this is not a mistake either.
No.
Um,
You know,
yeah.
I just want to add something. It's crazy because Pluto just went into Aquarius last night. So
Mhm.
I'm just thinking about that as well. Like that's insane.
Yeah, I'm coming out of 19 years of, I feel like, chaos,
Mm,
and I don't know what to do with it because uh, I didn't absorb it or transmute it
hmm
as successfully as I would have liked to.
Yeah. Well, cool thing about it is you didn't per se miss out on anything because you still have the opportunity to transmute it and transform it. And it's like you can't really be upset with yourself or try to rush anything because there's literally a divine like timing that's happening with these things, and everything happens when it's supposed to. And it's like you're doing it now as opposed to previously because you're ready now. You know what I'm saying? Whereas previously you weren't in a space where you could even transmute it or do it. So it's like there's literally no foul in anything. And it's always important to kind of just keep that higher awareness that everything is happening in correlation to a divine plan. You know what I'm saying? Sure.
Mhm.
So it's all beautiful. And everything is expanding for the better. I can feel it within my being. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, you probably can too.
Yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely.
for sure. It's been so wonderful connecting with you. And I look
Yeah,
forward to doing our next session together as well. You know what I'm saying? Other than that, I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your day and we'll definitely stay in touch. All right. Peace.
absolutely. Later.
All right, for sure.